Hi, and welcome to this episode of EV Chat. I'm Kieran Andrews, a software engineer and EV enthusiast. And today we're going to be talking about BYD beating Tesla in China and Australia. Is BYD finally the true Tesla killer that you haven't heard about? Also, everything electric in Australia is coming up. I'll be visiting, so I'm talking about that. And Toyota responds to our video. Joining me today, my friend Victor, who is a graphic designer and another EV enthusiast.
That I really like that one about.
So, BYD beats Tesla in Australia and China. Where are they going to conquer next? So, BYD has outsold Tesla in Australia for the first time in January 2024. And they've also surpassed Tesla's Q4 2023 as the world's largest selling electric car. So BYD, we've reported this previously in another podcast, but BYD outsold Tesla's confirmed in China, and in Australia this year they have finally beaten in our local country as well. So BYD sales includes the Seal, the Atto 3, and the Dolphin hatchback. Tesla has faced some delivery delays and some compliance issues with their Model 3 in Australia, and Tesla Model 3 also encountered a stop sale and a recall. Model Y shipments were delayed due to some stink bugs, which is another thing that's been happening for some of the EVs that have been coming to Australia.
What is a stink bug? Sorry.
Stink bugs. So there are bugs that get into the cars that need to be fumigated and quarantined before they arrive in Australia because they are a pest. And so the ships end up staying stranded at sea and not able to dock and not able to deliver cars because they have this pest on board.
Oh, so it's not like a software bug. It's an actual bug.
An actual physical stink bug.
Oh, okay.
And so if you squash them, they make a really bad smell. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that is no. I think it's important to have a chat about this because it sounds so Australian and so weird. Because Australia does protect quite a lot, everything that comes in, like either produce or livestock or anything like that. Because obviously the diversity is very important for the country. So it's funny how this is something incredibly localized to us, isn't it? Like it's probably something that you won't see in lots of places. Or is that a common thing?
Yeah, I think still lots of other countries will do quarantining and that sort of thing as well. So there is that sort of aspect. But I think Australia has quite stringent because they need to protect their agricultural industry. Another example between states is fruit fly, that sort of thing. But yeah, I think the exciting thing here, though, to talk about is more BYD and Tesla. And are BYD and Tesla in competition with each other?
Can we break down the numbers first? So yes, I think that let's get into that. But it was worldwide, China and Australia. So it was worldwide as well. So quite literally, BYD is the best seller of EVs in the whole world right now.
Yes.
And the Model 3 and the Model Y were the best. No, the Model Y was the best selling car in the world. Which means that BYD must be getting up there, particularly with the Atto, wouldn't it? Like that's the big ticket one.
Yeah, it's mostly China though. They have another name. We'll get into their model comparison a little bit later, but they have the local is called the Yuan Plus, which is the Atto 3, and that's what's selling very well in Australia right now. They also have some other cars too, but yeah, overall BYD is selling more electric cars than Tesla in China and more in Australia now for the first time too. So, it is big. Are they going to continue? Are they going to keep doing it? Or is Tesla going to pick up its sales? I guess that's the thing. From my perspective, any EVs are competing with petrol cars. And the most interesting or exciting bit is how can EVs compete with petrol cars? That's more exciting. But it's good to see a battle because I think the battle between BYD here and Tesla is going to reduce prices as they compete with each other. And I think that's the bit that I wanted to get into. Like, are they technically direct competitors? And are their cars Like, does the BYD Atto 3 compete with the Model Y? Like, if somebody's looking for a car, is that the kind of car that they would compare? Or is it a completely different sort of market segment, and that they're not actually taking people away from Tesla's BYD, but they may be taking people away from another similarly priced, well, probably cheaper petrol car?
Here's an interesting one, and I'm gonna talk by, and I know that we have something set up here, but when I bought my Tesla, my first one, I was about to buy a Toyota Kluger hybrid,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a completely different car and a completely different price point, a completely different size, and I still ended up buying an electric car that was like a sports sedan instead of an SUV. So I think that is a really broad way to start the chat. Uh, all cars are competitors to each other. At the end of the day, you only have a certain amount of time and a certain amount of money, and you can only buy one car. You're not gonna, so at the end of the day, you need to select which car you're gonna get, and I think that would get worse if they are electric, because you would have to make a decision beforehand if it's going to be a small one or how much you're going to spend, and then at that point you will need to make a selection between both brands. But at the end of the day, you already need to make that choice. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, I kind of think so. I think like maybe some of the reasons why though that they're not in competition with each other is that Tesla targets a different segment. So Tesla's primarily, and especially their history, been targeting the premium segment of the EV market. So with a focus on the performance and luxury area. But BYD has like a broader approach. They do vehicles, buses, trucks, cars, but also more affordable, right? So they're on the cheaper end. And I think that's why maybe the people that want a particular type of car are going to focus on the Tesla, whereas somebody that maybe is a little bit more budget conscious might focus on the BYD.
Those are market segments for sure, but at the end of the day, they both had Tesla very famously is trying to work and develop a Model 2. We already covered in the last podcast.
Mm.
So those segments will at some point interlap one into another if they are not already doing so. Like, how much is the Dolphin right now? Sorry, off the top of your head, do you know?
The Dolphin, it's 39,000 base, so that's before drive away
In Australia.
in Australia. I don't have it. I guess another key interesting part here is that BYD are dominating on sales without selling a single. Well, they sell cars in America, but they don't sell. They don't have their very popular EVs in America right now, and I think
Well,
that's
yeah,
also an
yeah,
interesting part to get to as well.
of course, absolutely. So that is probably an incredibly another place to start with, because this is only Europe, Australia, and Asia in general. Those are the only ones, and
Yeah,
probably one and Latin America. Latin
they
America, but this,
they sell hardly any vehicles in Europe right now, but Europe is already nervous and is starting to impose trade restrictions on BYD or on Chinese electric cars in anticipation that they could dominate the European market too. So I think there's another sign for you as well.
yeah, absolutely. Well, here's the first one. That it's not only for electric cars. That is something that has been happening in Australia with all cars. About 8 or 9 years ago, there was a massive push from this car manufacturer called Great Wall, and then Haval, and they started offering really, 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 really good deals in cars. Like, cars were priced by half, and they had really nice interiors and stuff like that. I don't think they are old enough for people to realize if they're good or bad. But for example, my sister ended up buying like an SUV that if you would have bought it from, I don't know, Nissan or whatever, would have been close to the 70 or 7 or $80,000 price, from around 35 to 40. So that is a push from China in all aspects and general directions. So it's obvious that it will translate to the EV market. The only way to stop them is this one. There's no way that anyone can be competitive with them in without having to impose these trade restrictions.
I don't know. I think the problem is that in Europe, more specifically, is that the incumbent manufacturers, so like I guess Mercedes and BMW, are nervous about the fact that they don't have that many EV offerings right now. And if Chinese EV companies were able to come in to Europe, they're just going to outcompete and potentially take too much business away from their prized automakers. And so I think that's what they're scared about, and that's what they're going to try and do. But at the same time, China has a lot of power and will also retaliate too. So I guess the reason why is that there is fears, or there's talks about the fact that China, and this is also a reason why I think BYD may end up being quite strong competition for Tesla, is that they have strong subsidies in China, and there's a lot of pro EV policies in China that help them and will help them, is also helping them to sell overseas and export. But also on the other side, Tesla have, and there are moves in America that actually are to make Tesla less competitive, which is kind of silly. So China's pushing their brands to make their EVs popular all around the world and internally, and America is trying to push EVs, but it's also favouring the incumbents like Ford and GM while trying to stop the force that is Tesla. So kind of a bit sad, but that's just the way things are at the moment.
Yeah, so just to paint a picture there, it's really funny that it's been politicized so much, and Tesla has been just left out in both parties. Like, they are the ugly duckling. Like, if you see Trump talking about electric cars, he's the range is, he keeps mocking them for some stupid reason. I don't understand why. I'm guessing he's pro petrol and he's just talking to his base. But still, makes absolutely no sense. They are made in America. They are an American brand. They are. It makes no sense. But then you also have the Democrats, which they also are not supporting them for some reason, and they constantly try to keep like pushing them just outside of the grant. So everybody else can get in, but they just inching them out from the grant so they cannot get in.
And I guess that's
really
a tough
funny strategy.
It's a tough political thing because I think a lot of it's driven by unions, and which is where a lot of the power comes from. And so, yeah, it's sort of infighting, which is not great. Whereas I think well, a lot of people criticize a lot of the things rightly about China's policies, but they can, when they decide they want to do something, move very quickly and strongly in a single direction.
So here's the one about them being in direct competition.
Yeah.
I have 2 Model 3s. If I would be right now, if I wouldn't have purchased them in 2022, and this would be 2024, and I would be buying my first one, chances are, yes, it would have been a Model 3, but I don't think the second one would have been a Tesla.
So yeah, if you were to buy them today, if you were going on the market again, yeah, you didn't have your cars, and you had the options that are available in the market right now, what would you buy?
Well, I would have gone for a smaller. Chances are, because also we didn't have like the array, the smorgasbord of of electric vehicles in Australia that we have right now. I would have probably look for a small SUV like the Auto 3, to be honest, or the MG4 or something like that, something just to drive me around, and I would have saved 30 grand on that one. And maybe for the other one, I would have bought a small SUV, maybe even the Kona or something like that, because I am not a Tesla fanboy. I do enjoy the Model 3, don't get me wrong. I think it's a fantastic car. But at the end of the day, I ended up making a compromise to purchase the Model 3 in several aspects.
But what about the Seal? Like, I almost feel like the Seal and the Model 3 are direct competitors. Like, I saw my first Seal on the road the other day, and it looks amazing. I can see the picture here, like really great running lights, that sleek front. It kind of looks like a similar Model 3.
It could be.
Would you get it?
What? I haven't seen it enough. I don't know enough about it. That is the main thing about, in general, BYD, and probably. So I think BYD has 2 main issues. The first one is that they are still a little bit unknown, or a very unknown brand. And the second one is that they have a massive stigma about being a Chinese manufactured car. And that stigma is a big one. It's not a small one. I'm sure we're going to see it in the comments. I'll tell you this right now. Lots of people going like, oh, they are cheap and they are this. And I have no opinion about them because I haven't seen one or driven one or anything like that. But that is a problem for them for sure.
Yeah, but it's a $15,000 difference. So if you look at the base Model 3, it's $64,000 in Australia right now. or 39,000 in America. But the Seal, the base model, is $49,000. There is, of course, the top spec, which is 68, and there's on-road as well, so it's a little bit more expensive when you actually go to buy it. But you're comparing those same prices. You got $15,000 in your pocket, and you get this car.
Yeah, yeah,
I think a
absolutely.
lot of people are gonna go, well, I'll grab this.
For me, the other one that is a really big one is that the Tesla is really restrictive with a lot of stuff. And I don't know enough about BYD, and you probably would be able to enlighten me. But the stuff like changing your own tires, or not having Android Auto, or Apple CarPlay, or all of those things that make a car a normal car. It seems like you have to be wearing a Tesla T-shirt to drive a Tesla and to interact with a Tesla, and that really does bother me a lot. Like if I get a flat tire, I have to call Tesla to change my tire because I cannot do it myself. That one still to this day really irks me, to be completely honest.
Mm.
So I would rather have a normal car that I can just go and take to the shop. I know that I'm being facetious about that, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, but then is the Seal then like a more normal car? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, well, it's not a walled garden. We were talking outside before recording. We're talking about Apple, and that's one of the things that I absolutely despise about Apple, the walled garden thing. And Tesla is exactly like that. I would just wish that I can just mirror my screen with Android Auto. That's
Mm.
all I want. I want to be able to just go to a shop, buy a tire, and put it on. Simple and easy stuff, like incredible simple stuff, and you cannot do lots of those things. It's there's always something that you have to go through them, and that bothers me a lot. So I
Yeah.
would rather have a Chinese car that I would be able to do all of those things myself than having to jump through these hoops. Is this something that bothers you in your Tesla?
I personally not bothered. I guess I haven't been really bitten by it too much yet. I have had really good experiences with Tesla support. I know there are lots of negative reports out there, but mine have been positive. But I'm just one person, whereas you want
Absolutely.
a much larger sample size to really compare. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not too worried. Like I already have roadside assistance for when I have my petrol car, and if I had any problems, I'd do that. Yeah, not too concerned. You can technically change the tires yourself. Like there is ways to
But you
do
cannot
it. Sure, it's
purchase them.
harder.
You cannot purchase them. That's the main issue. Like,
Yeah.
you cannot physically go to a tire place and say, I want a Tesla tire. That is the main problem. So
Mm.
unless you get a puncture and you somehow get another Tesla tire, you cannot buy them. So yes, you can change them, but where do you get them?
Yeah, I thought you could, but yeah, maybe not.
Let's
I'll
double
have to
check that
definitely
one.
look into it at some point. Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
I remember looking at it at least 2 years ago, and you couldn't. I don't know if you can now, but it's
mm.
something that I would like Tesla to change. The Tesla, it's something that I would
Definitely.
like
Well,
to
as they
Tesla to
mature and as they become a much like bigger company in a more mass market, I do think they're going to have to compete on that area. Like I think one of the things that Toyota keeps going on about in their advertising at the moment and all of their stuff is how good their service is, how good their like their aftermarket, how loyal their customers are to the brand and those sorts of things. And so that's something that I think Tesla is right now is a weakness on and definitely needs to compete on and get better at. But is BYD better? I haven't heard that many reports about BYD service, and I'd love to know more. So if you have yourself own in Australia or even in China, you own a BYD, you had to take it in for service. Tell us your experiences. Like, how did it go? What is it like?
Yeah.
The other bit that I want to touch on and keen to get your opinion on too is the technology. So in terms of BYD versus Tesla, both of them make batteries. So both of them may have battery technology, which I think is an important feature of why they are able to compete so much with each other on price. They also have very good software. They both focus on autonomous features and also their manufacturing process, which is really key to reducing costs in how they build stuff. So, like, who's the winner there? Are they equal? Is one ahead, do you think? Or are they like are Tesla ahead or BYD ahead? What do you reckon?
I reckon we need a piece of the puzzle for each. We need BYD to go into America fully and into Europe like 100%. Like for them to represent a full brand, not something that you've heard from a friend. And so that is one, and the other one is we need Tesla to make a budget car. You know, we need that Model 2, and at that point, when they are in equal footing, we will see. Like I don't think they are quite. Besides being EVs, as you were saying, I don't think that
Mhm.
they are quite in equal footing just yet, but they will be, and
Yeah.
and in the near future, in the next 2 years, they will be. But one of the things that Tesla has, and I saw that you wrote it in the doc, was is the brand positioning. We were talking about how Toyota are very, very, very loyal to the brand. Tesla is probably even more. Tesla sometimes gets to, as a Tesla owner and being in Facebook groups about Tesla and tips and tricks and follow channels and stuff like that, it gets religious. It gets cult like. This
Mm.
and especially with Elon Musk and all of the things around him and all of that stuff, it is an interesting one, which BYD doesn't have. I would dare say that the general perception of Tesla, in general, when with someone that has or is looking to purchase an EV, is generally positive, and with BYD is generally negative because it has stigmas. And I'm generalizing, obviously.
Yeah. But there's also, I
I
think,
know it's a
there's also like this kind of love hate with Tesla. It's like, okay, you're either a fan of it and you're keen for, but also there's a lot of people out there that are almost like on the other side of like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to buy one because Elon's doing all this stuff that I don't agree with, and the company has a history of treating their staff poorly, or some other reason that they don't like it, and they end up going, oh, I'm not going to buy one of those because of those things. So like,
But those
uh,
are American politics, very, very American politics. I don't think those translate worldwide. And the other thing that I would say is that for anyone, for a layman person that just watches Dancing with the Stars on a Saturday night, and and they're saying, "Oh, I would like to check these EV cars," like which is 75% of the general population of Australia. I don't know how invested they are in how good or how bad the cars are. They just have like a general perception that has been painted with a massively broad stroke. And
mm,
that's where they start. Like that is the starting point. I'm not saying that that is the truth, but that feels to be the general idea that people have towards those brands. Oh, one is Chinese, it's gotta be cheap, it's gotta be a knockoff. They're probably blah 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 blah. And the other one is, oh no, Elon Musk is this like genius. And they are like these stickers that both of them have in general. Again, massive generalization. And I think until that changes, which will in maybe 2 or 3 years when people drive more of these cars, then we will see better competition. But right now, I don't think they're on equal footing again.
yeah, I think, I guess sort of more long term in terms of the technology, like focusing on the technology, which I think is what I like to look at, is that, as I
Mm,
said before, both BYD and Tesla both focus on battery technology, and they are strong in that area. They're quite far ahead. Interestingly, though, Tesla does buy batteries from BYD, some of
mhm.
their blade batteries. So almost in some aspects, BYD kind of wins out a top on battery technology a little bit. But at the same time, Tesla's developing this 4680 battery that they use in their Cybertruck and the US manufactured Model Y. So are they kind of there, but they're maybe their technology isn't quite like mass produced yet. So that's an interesting one to watch. So battery technology, I think they're kind of even. There's certain areas where BYD is better, certain areas where Tesla's better. I think in terms of software, from what I've heard, like from first person accounts, the software in Tesla cars is generally better polished
Mhm.
in terms of the user experience, and they have some interesting technology around, like, I don't know, they recently did the fancy headlights with the projector, like was, I can adjust exactly where the beams go. That was a software update that's rolled out to cars. Their software updates are great generally. But at the same time, there is still complaints. There's a lot of complaints to Tesla, like they keep tweaking the automatic windscreen wipers. They keep updating things like autopilot, and it has all sorts of issues every time you jump in. You don't know what you're going to get. So there's definitely things there, but I think a lot of the complaints more about BYD are more about the user experience and things that are frustrating to do, even though it does have Android Auto and CarPlay, that there is clunkiness there that kind of gets in the way of just the normal operation, where I think some of the things in the Tesla are like not as important necessarily. But yeah, I still think in terms of like their software team, and from what I've heard, is that Tesla is definitely ahead on the software for now. But will they always be? Is BYD going to jump ahead at Tesla at some point?
That's very arguable. Like, from my personal experience, the UI of my Teslas have always given me an issue.
Yeah.
Like, it would just not connect to Wi-Fi. It would like so. I mean, what I'm trying to say is not that Tesla is bad. Is that it comes down to the experience of each person at the end of the day. But what I haven't heard about BYD that I think is incredibly important. That is one of the things that put Toyota over the top is build quality and perception of value, which is something that I do every day. That's exactly how I start selling stuff with my clients. Like, hold on. What's going to be your perception of value? When we're designing packaging, perception of value is incredibly important. And I think that's one of the main reasons why BYD is pulling ahead, because it has a way better perception of value. If you manage to go past that stigma, if the build quality is there, which I don't know if it is, by the way, I'm not saying it is there. I'm just saying if it is, then the perception of value would be just better than a Tesla. And Tesla, for a lot of people, may just sound like it's just a fancy car. I just want a normal EV that will take me from point A to point B. And
Yeah.
this would sound like great value. But do you know much about the build quality and how good or how bad the BYDs are in general?
Well, I guess I haven't really heard that much about it. So for me, that's a sign that it's actually pretty good. There hasn't been any sort of negativity around it. There hasn't been any reports. It could just be, there could be, but it could be hidden out there. I guess there tends to be, if there's any problems with a Tesla, there tends to be a lot of news coverage about it,
Yes.
which is kind of weird. But I haven't really heard much about BYD. That could also be a strength of theirs. They could also be a silent, if they're not being, I guess, targeted, or they're not being put in the news, and they're just releasing a great product that people are buying, and they end up just overtaking, kind of out of nowhere, they're going to take a lot of people by surprise. So that could actually be to their advantage of not really being very loud as a brand.
So
but yeah, I haven't heard anything about build quality. Build quality is good, and I think even Teslas and BYDs out of China are probably pretty good. It's more that the build quality out of the US factories is the ones that are the problem.
So, my main question about it is, if you remove all of the cars sold in China, because obviously there's a crap load of them, and I mean a crap load of them, would BYD still come on top in any other place that is not Australia? Because I think that is bending the number. That is morphing the number by a huge amount.
Well, they're in the top. They're at the top in China.
Yeah, I know. I get that. But they also Chinese made. They would probably have, you said it, lots of subsidies that would be cheaper.
Yeah.
The stigma doesn't exist in China because they are in China.
But there is a lot of competition. There are a lot of EV companies in China that are all competing quite a lot. We've got, like, say, NIO, and I don't have all the names here. I should have started, but NIO is one of the ones that I know about from it, like that they are selling in Europe, and there are just so many. Like, there's so many that they're struggling at the moment because they keep popping up every single day, and they almost need to consolidate a little bit. But in that very highly competitive market, BYD is doing well and is the best. So I think that's good signs.
But doesn't answer the question I was saying. Is the number worldwide, not only in China, but worldwide, being massively warped by the amount of cars that are being sold in China? Because Tesla does not sell lots of cars in China because of what you just said, and because they are not that great value in Chinese markets.
Well, they do. Historically, Tesla has sold a lot of cars in China. It's only just recently that they've been overtaken by BYD. So
I know that they were performing strongly in China, and they have the Shanghai factory and all of that kind of stuff. But you said it yourself. I don't think they are performing as well in China. So where I'm going with this is, in localization, China is so important that taking the China market is almost as relevant as taking the world market because they just buy so many cars. So if you remove the numbers from both Tesla in China and BYD in China, would they be in equal footing? That is the question that I
Yeah.
would have.
I'd love, as you said earlier, I'd love to see what they do in America. But I think that as soon as they start releasing cars in America, they're going to get all sorts of like bans or like trade imports and things to try to stop them from dominating. So I think they're sort of are trying to be very cautious, or in terms, because there's a rocky relationship between the US and China, and so
Yes,
I think that's definitely something that
here's another thing about it.
they're challenged with in terms of navigating it.
Here's another thing. I think is the very first. I don't know how to say it. The very first sensitive car or sensitive brand that has come to the EV ever. Like, yes, they were cheap cars, but they always had like your Leafs and your Bolts and stuff like that. They always had like, well, they have very little range, or they break down, or they overheat, whatever you want. This is the very first time we have seen a sensitive car in an EV. Like Teslas are, luxury cars at the end of the day. They are taxed as luxury cars. When more and more and more cars and more brands start releasing sensitive cars and sensitively priced cars around the market, would BYD still stay on top? I think that's the main question, not so much
Yeah, but
Tesla, but
that's
the whole
what
market.
that's what BYD is doing. They are releasing at a lower price point, and that's what's attracting, I think, people too, and that's why they're competing right now. Like, can they sustain that? That's going to be an interesting thing. And yeah, are they going to be able to do well in Europe? There is one thing we haven't mentioned as well, that it is a sort of a card up Tesla sleeve, is that they do have the supercharger network, and I think that does give them a slight edge over BYD right now, especially in places that aren't China. They do have a large supercharger network in China, but there are also a lot of other EV charging companies in China too. It's just that worldwide, though, I think Tesla have a much greater and bigger supercharging network, which if BYD were to sell it in America right now, they would struggle because the charging's just not good for non-Teslas. And so that's a challenge. Whereas I think in Australia, like I've commented this before, I think charging in Australia is actually for interstate travel and for certain routes and for like city traveling, the charging infrastructure in Australia is quite good, especially this year. Like, it's sort of doubled recently. And so that's why maybe BYD is doing well, because the charging's there. So I think that's going to be a key one. Like, is if the US does get better charging for all EVs, is that the point where BYD enters the markets and starts dominating?
Yeah, you said it as well. I think that is incredibly important. For me, would be, as as a person that trades in marketing and manipulation, because that is what I do. For me, trying to remove that, I don't know, that stigma of China bad or Tesla good, BYD bad, that a lot of people have, would be probably the most important thing. But it seems like it's crumbling down as we speak. And I
Yeah.
get that you don't have it, but a lot of people still do.
But it's happened before, hasn't it? Right, with Japanese cars, wasn't there like in the 90s that period where there was all these cheap Japanese cars flooding the American market, and they were considered like crap and broken down? There's that old stigma around like even Hyundai as well. I guess they're not technically Japanese, but like there was other Japanese manufacturers that were sort of like, oh, they're the cheap, crappy cars. And so now people are like, oh, they're good. Like Toyota is like the top selling company and they're Japanese. So
I'm not saying that it cannot be done. I'm not saying that it hasn't happened before, because it has. I'm just saying that they need to overcome it.
I think they will. My prediction is I think they will, and I think that's going to happen at some point. And that
I think timing for the other brands is probably the most important thing. Like, if tomorrow Toyota would come around and would say, you know what, we have a Toyota Corolla for under $35,000 Australian with a 250-kilometer range, that would be probably one of the biggest things. It would be an atom bomb for EV vehicles around the world. It hasn't happened, but if it would happen, or even worse, imagine a Toyota Hilux which is like another cult car. People, they between the Nissan Navara and the Toyota Hilux is wow. If that would happen, then I don't know where BYD would end up being with a market that is fully competitive in EVs. So in 5 to 10 years, that is probably for me the most interesting one because they don't have real competition, but Tesla in some aspects. And when that happens, I wonder what will happen. That is probably the interesting one.
Yeah, like are Toyota going to surprise us and just bring out a really affordable car with a great battery and range, and it's just going to sell and they're going to manufacture them quickly? Like, is that going to happen? I personally, no, I don't think so. But yeah, I do think that both Tesla and BYD have the factories, have the technology, have the software to both do really well. And I think almost like I think both of them, if they can both compete against petrol cars, I reckon that's the winning strategy rather than trying to compete with each other.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess what I want to see is that I'm going to be attending Fully Charged Live this weekend, and I'm really excited. Both Tesla and BYD, as well as a lot of other car manufacturers, are going to be there. So I'll go check out the BYD.
Can I scratch just one more thing into the conversation real quickly, just to put it right there, because there's something that is incredibly obvious, like an axiom of this conversation, that we are discussing two brands that only produce electric cars, and there's not many of those ones. Most of the other brands have petrol cars. They have been around for a very long time, but BYD and Tesla do not have an internal combustion car. They only have electric cars, 100%. That's what makes it even more interesting.
But technically, BYD does have petrol cars, and they do have hybrids.
They do have sorry, I didn't know. In Australia, do they sell hybrids in Australia?
I'm not sure if it's in Australia or not, but they do sell petrol cars.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Which is slightly different than so when we took like they still sell a lot of hybrids in China, and they do definitely sell petrol cars too.
I have an article that I'm reading here that they discontinued the petrol only, the gas only cars in 2022.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So they're now only selling hybrids and electrics, and I think their strategy going forward is eventually going to be to get rid of their hybrids, but they do have a strategy to introduce a hybrid ute into Australia, which could do really well if Toyota don't respond. And so I think, especially with the Great Wall Motor and some of the other cars that maybe people have gotten, they're like, oh yeah, I've got a Chinese ute, it's really awesome. And there's this new BYD that's a hybrid and it's going to save me petrol, but it's actually got a lot of power and all the features I want. That could do well in Australia. But there still is that stigma there, right? So
interesting. All right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make that point because it's been perceived, at least in Australia, yes, I understand that is coming, but at least in Australia, BYD is sold or perceived as a fully electric brand.
Oh yeah, because here they are really, except for the hybrid that they will eventually introduce. But yeah,
but they haven't released it yet. That's what I'm saying. Yes.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
That's what I wanted to put it again in equal footing, because we're not discussing about Ford that has 100 years of making internal combustion engines, and now they are changing. These are cars that you said it, they are manufacturing the batteries, they are manufacturing almost the whole part of the process. They are literally mining the cobalt, like BYD literally is mining the cobalt to produce the batteries, which is vertical integration as much as you can get it.
Well, they have their own cobalt-free batteries too, and they also they have even made custom-made ships in order to ship their cars to countries to have a more efficient export as well. So that's something that Tesla just doesn't have right now too.
Yes. But just the last thing, sorry, but this is such a rich discussion. But Tesla, I guess what this really gets interesting and spicy is that extra lots of stuff that no other car manufacturer has. You were saying it, like, this distribution channel, this building of the factories, all of these things that there's no other car that has it but Tesla and BYD. I'm trying to think, like, for example, even Nissan was bought by Renault, and now there's Nissan building being built in X, Y, and Z factories, and being rebadged, and so there's all of these, I don't know,
Yeah, the
messiness.
closest is probably VW in Europe, as they have some factories that are devoted to EVs, and also Hyundai as well have some more dedicated factories as well, and they are manufacturing more. But again, it's not at the same level as Tesla or
Yeah,
BYD. Nowhere near yet, and they're
yeah.
going to have to ramp that up if they want to sell more cars
That's
too.
that's where I was going, and also the charging, and also the everything. Like, especially if Tesla ends up winning the charging plug war, which they seem like they will, that would be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess the next thing is fully charged. So I'll be tending fully charged. As you can see, the BYD seal is going to be there. Model Y on all the Tesla. There's some interesting other cars. So I guess the thing is, I'll be attending, and there's things I'll be looking out for. I'll be there. If you see me in person, come say hi. So the Polestar 3, interesting car. It looks cool. I definitely want to check it out. But yes, as pointed out by Victor in the notes, $135,000. It is very expensive. A very expensive car. Is that going to translate to sales? Polestar's having some troubles right now. Why it's actually so expensive?
Oh,
It's
I,
a
I do
weird
believe
one.
that.
It's kind of positioned for like car kind of enthusiasts as a weird car, but they're sort of also trying to position it for towing. It's sort of,
And
I don't know.
safety as well. I don't know. It
It's a
seems.
weird car. I don't know if they know, but they are a premier sponsor of Fully Charged, so they're going to be there and in a lot of the talking and that sort of stuff.
So probably what I would mention about it is the technology. So yes, it's an expensive car, but it sort of reminds me a little bit of Tesla when they were putting all of this technology. And the torque vectoring is the big selling point behind them. The fact that um, every single wheel has independent torque, especially in the back, so they don't have a rear axle.
Mm-hmm.
That is exciting and interesting, especially for, as you said it, petrol heads, and people that are really into min-maxing their cars and performance, and things like that. That's interesting, but $135,000 seems. Ooh. And you know what? I don't think it's a pretty car. Personally, it looks a lot like it looks like a crossover. It looks like a Nissan Qashqai or something like that. I don't think it looks sporty enough to warrant that amount of money. What do you think?
Yeah, I do kind of like it. I do kind of it does for me. It does kind of look a little bit sporty, but
I don't know. It's in this weird halfway there. I don't know. You will
yeah.
show us pictures and you will let us know about it for sure.
Definitely, I would. But I'll be checking it out in person. Maybe post a video, like a walk around while I'm there at the show,
Mhm.
and like what it's like, etc. So it'd be keen. But yeah, from these pictures, it looks good. But I still think the Polestar 2 looks better, just from these pictures that I'm looking at here.
Fair enough.
One other cool car though that is not. It's just, I don't know. I think it's a legacy car brand, kind of, but I guess it's now owned by a Chinese company. But there's the Lotus Elitra. Sure, it's a sports car. I think it's a cool looking car. It's 240K, so not many people are necessarily going to buy it, including, and like, we've got a on-road on top of that too, so it's more expensive than that in Australia. But yeah, I don't know. I love the yellow spec
I,
they got.
this is another car that I don't understand. Like, for me, I see things as in I see things as in who's gonna buy these cars. And Lotus are world famous for selling sporty, really streamlined, sort of like, what's the word that I'm looking for? Organic, bulbous kind of, like, I don't know. So I don't understand this guy, especially at this price
Mm.
range. It sounds almost like an experiment to me. I don't know.
Yeah,
What do you think?
it's a curiosity, like the fact that they're launching it in Australia and the fact that I can see it in person. It'd be a good thing of me to just have a look and go, like, is
Oh,
it
absolutely. Oh,
weird? Like,
no,
yeah.
don't get me. Like, the head scratch factor is 100% there. Like,
Yeah,
what? Okay, I want to see that.
that's
But
exactly what I want to see. That's why I'm going to see it. Yeah.
yeah, but now, as in the factor of like, oh, would it work in the market? That's a different one.
No,
Lots
probably
of
not.
like,
A few people will buy it because they want something different and they want an EV, and I think that's fine.
well, there's no Model X's being made here, so I reckon this is probably for that kind of people.
It
Maybe.
could, yeah. Who does it appeal to? Not sure.
Mm.
The other car that I'm interested in, maybe the pricing is a bit of a poor one in Australia, but the Ford Mach-E is actually an exciting car for me. I haven't seen one in person yet. Really do want to check that one out. Yeah.
So
Have
I
you seen
added the
one?
pricing there. It says around 80K, but it actually starts at 72,000 plus on-road costs. So it comes to roughly around $80,000, which is Tesla territory, like
Yeah.
Tesla Model 3 territory. So that would be pretty much a direct competitor if you're after a Tesla to be used as a sports car, because that's one of the things that I don't think we mentioned enough about a Tesla. A Tesla has a massive booth, which is something that I appreciate having kids. It is very spacious, and it is just not too short and not too tall. It's just a good sedan car, but it's also sportsy and sexy. If you want your Tesla as a sportsy and sexy car, the Mach-E is pretty much in the same range, probably even cheaper than the performance model of the Model 3. So
Mm.
I reckon that could be a direct competitor. Lots of different colors. You
Yeah, it
know,
could
you know
be.
what they say about lines. They make cars go faster. You know, the stripes, racing
Yeah.
stripes. Can beat
There's
those.
not that many sales though, so far they haven't really sold that many, and it hasn't made a big splash in Australia yet. It could. Maybe the fully charged big
Racing
Kickstart
stripes.
people see it. They see the racing
Racing
stripes and they're like,
stripes.
I want one. So yeah, that'd be an interesting one. Some delivery vans, like that's not something that has really, like, I think that's a huge potential thing for the future, is that delivery vans transitioning to electric, I think is going to be very exciting. So I'm going to have to see some of those potential. Like, I think one thing I'd love to do in the future is one of those, like being able to go in a camper van or travel the country in a van that you fitted out with like a bed and sort of a sink. There's a lot of people that are doing that through the pandemic. Maybe it's gone out of fashion now, but I think if there's a really good electric van, that could be kind of cool.
So
So
especially what I've seen about that is these awnings that they put with solar. So they always have like, I don't know, like four panels, like four small panels at the top that, they would power up while they are driving. Obviously not a lot, but then they just go, they park, and then the awning comes around, and then they put a couple of extra ones on the floor, which would be, you could easily get maybe 3 kilowatts or something like that out of
yeah,
like
and if you're just
that
sitting in
setting.
a caravan park, or you're sitting in a location and you're going for a hike, your car could be charging during the day. Like, you're not driving it all the time. And yeah, you could get to more remote locations with solar panels that don't have as much charging infrastructure. So I don't know, I think that'd be really cool. Like, you could write some good stories about that. But yeah, are the vans good enough? Do they have good enough batteries yet?
The solar
And
panels good enough
price?
for what we're talking about? They are
Yeah,
heavy.
don't know.
There's lots of things. So this is like a make believe world. I don't think we're quite
Yeah, we're
there.
not quite there yet, but I'm looking at the future, and it'd be cool to
Yeah,
go
yeah,
to
yeah,
fully
yeah.
charged and think about the future, because that's what
Yeah,
I
yeah.
had to do there. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of panels there. Some of my colleagues are going to be speaking at some of the panels, so it'd be cool there to support them as
So
well.
you speak about colleagues, but I don't think you really talked about what you do. And I know that you don't want to mention company names, but I think that's interesting. Why are you even going here? Like, what do you do? Tell us a little bit about yourself, Kieran. Why
Yeah,
why do you
so
know so
software
much about EVs?
engineer. I software engineer for a large charging network. I work on the back end that makes it all work. And yeah, so as that, I'm representing my company there. Yeah, I guess that's the main thing.
That's the main thing. Well, no, but I think that's pretty interesting because you're not going there as an enthusiast, but as an what how can I say it, as an insider? Is that the right word? It's just working and
Yeah,
seeing. Yes.
yeah, from both aspects. Like, there's personal reasons why I want to go, and then there's also professional reasons as well. So it's both sort of things.
Hmm.
And I guess it's a good idea to get an idea of where things are at, the industry, what's coming next, what are some of the relationships or different companies that can partnership and work together, and where is the future going to be, so that we can prepare for it. So yeah, pretty excited.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I think as well, another thing is that there's going to be some test drives as well this year. Last year there were some test drives, but they were pretty poorly organized, and you had to like sort of walk off site to go to them. This year I think it's going to be a lot better, so it might be cool to do that. And yeah, as I said before, I'm going to post some footage of it on the YouTube channel. There might just be some quick shorts or some super just unedited videos, so watch out for those. But it'll be good to share the experience of Fully Charged with all of you.
Looking forward to those beyond. Really looking forward to those ones.
So Toyota has actually, maybe they've been watching our channel because they have been responding to criticism in Australia that they're not dumping diesels. So that they're anti-EVs. Like, that's what I've been saying. The Tesla, I've been saying Toyota is anti-EV for a long time. They must have been watching our videos because that's what I've been going on about. But also Greenpeace has been saying the same thing. So they agree with us as well. So Greenpeace has criticised them for their slow EV adoption and continued diesel engine production. Although Toyota do intend to produce their BZ4X electric vehicle. Hopefully the wheels don't fall off like it has previously.
Kieran, straight face. you sound like a mother-in-law talking to like, well, I just hope this time you won't find.
Right, sorry. I guess what the company goes on about is that they have a mix of battery electric vehicles, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, and potentially hydrogen fuel cell vehicles alongside their traditional internal combustion engines. So they're talking about a strategy that's like, oh yeah, well, we're not going to pick one. We've got this strategy of all these different things, and we're dictated by the market. So yeah, bullshit. And their sale, that Toyota Australia is
a little bit out. You cannot just edit the last bit.
What do you mean?
Well, like, you finish the things like, yeah, guys, bullshit. Like, you always have to add that tiny little bit in. I find it very funny. Sorry, kid.
Yeah. So as Toyota Australia's VP of Sales and Marketing, Sean Hanley, who has a hard job when facing this criticism, asserts the company's excitement for EVs is there, but it doesn't see them as a sole solution for carbon neutrality. Okay, so we're going to still build cars that pollute the environment and put out noxious fumes because that's the strategy to reduce carbon emissions. Okay, whatever. The company justifies its continued diesel offerings by their current market offering demand. So, okay, people are buying them, so we have to keep making them. And pointing to their sales figures of their diesel-powered use in 2023. Sure, okay, yep, maybe they're selling them now, but are they going to sell them in 3-5 years? We'll see. I did talk about the BYD Ute earlier. And they stress the importance of offering vehicles with reduced carbon footprints without compromising capability in line with consumer demands. So yeah, there are certain people in Australia that have certain requirements that EVs don't target and don't work for right now, which does make sense. But yeah, like as you said earlier, if they were to bring out a Corolla with a battery in it that was a competitive price, I think it would do really well. So why haven't they?
Okay,
yeah.
First of all, I'll say that I don't think they're anti-EVs. I think I don't think they're like, oh, they go around saying, death to all EVs. You know, I imagine, I think for them, the main thing is they want to push their hydrogen technology. They still are very heavily invested in that. And other people are as well, by the way. Like, there's all of these, conspiracy theories about, how hydrogen, yada, yada, yada. And we've talked about it at length. But that is the main reason, is that not that they are anti-EVs, is that they are in two places at the same time. One of them is they are incredibly successful. They are still the biggest brand in cars all over the world. And I think that's where a lot of hatred comes from. Like, mate, you are the biggest one. You should be the one, spearheading all of this new technology. And maybe to their own eyes, they are, because they have the hydrogen stuff, which hasn't still received any adoption. I was going to say mass adoption, but just adoption. We're talking orphanage adoption at this point. It doesn't matter.
5 sales.
Adoption. Yes.
Maybe.
But so obviously there's lots of stuff behind it. the main question is, why would you change something if you are still number one? And I get that the answer is because you may not be number one tomorrow. I get that. But for a company without any direction, you would believe that everything that you are doing is correct while you are still up in number one. Would
Mm.
they still number one in 2, 3, or 4 years? I don't know. I don't think so. I think the market is going a different way, and I think they are trying to to dip their toes in saying, "Oh well, no, 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 we're gonna release the B-Set 4X." You know that's. Um, but we talked about it.
But
Sorry,
they're
sorry.
no longer number one anymore, though.
They're not.
Well, in terms of the top selling car in the world, Model
Well,
Y.
no, yeah, not the top selling car in the world, but they are still the top manufacturer, like all over in
Yeah, in
all.
terms of total, like everything, if you compare everything, yes.
Yes, they are, and so I don't know.
That's a sign of things
Where
to
did
come,
they?
maybe.
What went wrong? They essentially popularized. A lot of people would even say they invented the hybrid, the Prius, the Prius or the Prius, wherever you are.
Yeah, Prius
Uh,
is what I'd say.
all right. It was the most sold car in America for a very long time, and at the beginning of the 2000s, mid 2000s, everybody had a Prius or a Prius. Sorry, uh, and they spearheaded electric vehicles. Um, and what happened? Was it just this hydrogen stuff? What happened with Toyota? You tell me.
Yeah, I think it's mostly just been delaying tactics. They're always talking about the future. They're always talking about the new stuff. Their sort of hybrid stuff was great. It came out at the right time, but I don't know if they had then started kind of going, oh, okay, well, we've got a hybrid, we've also got our EV option, and slowly trying to improve it and make the batteries better or make their motors better, but it just stagnated and stopped. Like they did make their Corolla and their Camry in Australia hybrid. They weren't hybrid before, so they transitioned more and more vehicles after the Prius. So there was some like strategies there, and I think they were very attractive for taxis because they had very good fuel consumption. But yeah, it just seems like they've just kind of stopped, and there's no new thing, and all of their advertising on TV is just all about hybrid and fuel cell technology and how they're this leader in technology when they just it's like a concept car. It's not mass market. It's not this technology that is out there. Everyone who's looked into the physics of it knows that hydrogen is not really going to go there. It's not going to be a major technology choice for passenger vehicles, and maybe for other segments in other areas. They had truly believed that hydrogen was the future. I would have thought they'd be rolling out more and more hydrogen stations. They'd be investing more money in it. They'd actually be selling hydrogen cars. They'd be like marketing the instead of marketing the company and marketing their technology that doesn't exist yet in a mass market, they would instead be selling a car that has that technology in it. And I think that's the key bit. That's the key bit that is like weird, is that they're talking up, oh, we're the leader. But then when you go and like, okay, well, I want to buy that thing that you're hinting at. Well, you can't. It's just weird.
Yeah, especially because it's been such a long time. So this hydrogen stuff is what, 12, 10 years old since they started making. They even released at some point, I think it was a Corolla or one of those ones.
Yeah, the Mirai.
That's exactly right. And you can buy them in California, and there was like a station or two, and it was like, oh, so this is going somewhere.
2014, the world's first
2014, 10 years
hydrogen
ago.
fuel cell electric vehicle was released. They've
10
had a
years
long
ago.
time since its
They have
launch.
done nothing with it. Such a good car. So I said, oh, well, I would buy a hybrid here, the Kluger. But then you also come with the biggest problem that Toyota is facing right now, that maybe even will take it down, which is you cannot find them. You cannot buy one. If you go, the waiting list is 2 years now.
Yeah.
It's turning into madness now, and they keep churning the same arguments like, oh no, it's post COVID microchip shortages, yada 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 yada. But it seems like every single other car manufacturer has been overcoming it or has completely overcome it, and
Yeah.
Toyota hasn't, and I don't understand it.
Don't get it. There is one other aspect here which I think could be interesting, and this could be a win for them or a way out, is that they do have their more luxury brand Lexus. And if they were to release a competitive Lexus car while still selling their petrol cars under their Toyota brand, they might actually be able to make some higher margins on their Lexus cars, get some people in it, test out that, get it better, and then eventually make a cheaper version with their Toyota brand. So I don't know. I feel like that might be a way out for them, as that's the sort of the Tesla approach of like more expensive and then go to cheaper. But yeah,
that would never work because no one has ever done that before. Releasing a really expensive car to fund the rest of the company. It's never worked. What are you talking about? It's not tried and tested, obviously.
Yeah.
That was a bit of humor. Obviously, that's exactly how Tesla did it.
Yes.
Didn't understand my subtlety.
Yeah. But yeah, I've had an absolute ball. Been really enjoying having a chat with you today. It's been great.
It was a great chat. I'm really looking forward to seeing everything from Fully Charged, and really looking forward for the next TV chat next week.
Definitely,
I'm sure you're gonna come fully loaded with
I'll have all sorts of things that I want to talk about. I'd be super excited. It might just be me talking about anything that I find there, and not even any articles. So just all the stuff that I saw. So yeah, keep subscribed so that you get that video when it pops up on our channel.
The bell thing as well. Thank you very much, Kieran. It was great chatting with you.
Yeah, it was.